Well, good evening. I just have to share this because it goes along with my lesson tonight. My wife was joking with me back there a moment ago, and she said, "Don't embarrass me." And she's going to be so embarrassed by that, but she was joking with me. But I only say it because it plays along with what I wanted to talk about for a few moments here this evening, and it has to do with pressure. You know, we live in this world, and pressure exists in almost every facet of our life. You know, whether it's a job, whether it's we're at home with our children, whether it's we're with our family, or we're trying to keep our relationships alive. There's pressure everywhere, and that is just as much here in the church for us Christians, and also for those who are not yet Christians. This extreme pressure that exists. I've been teaching the teenage class, and we've been talking a lot about just the general things that we face. And one of the things that seems to be coming up a lot is the amount of pressure that everybody is under. And sometimes almost even how crippling that pressure can be, because we think about the expectations that parents have for children, the expectations that our schools have for our children, the expectations that we place on ourselves, and what we think we should do, and how we think we should be. And so part of that conversation, really, I'm trying to bring it all back to Christianity and there, but if we're not yet Christians, there's this huge fear of whether we can be 100% Christian. Can we do what God asks us to do? Can we do all of it and be all Christian that we need to be? And if we're Christians, there's this extreme pressure to please God, now that we know this perfect sacrifice that was given for us. And so that's what I want to speak about for just a few moments here. We read the Bible, we see commands in verse after verse, telling us things that we need to be doing, showing us things that maybe we're not doing enough of, right? So all of these additional pressures and expectations that exist. If I told you today, right now, to write down 5 things that you need to do better, or that you need to do that you're not doing, how many people here, with a raise of hands, could write down 5 things in a matter of seconds? Now, how many of us are Christians? You see, there's this unfair pressure that gets placed on, especially those who are not Christians, to think that they can't become a Christian till they've achieved everything that we say as a Christian we should be, right? And so this pressure exists, and at a young age, that's a tough thing to handle, to think that you need to be perfect before you can actually be a Christian. But the reality is that God doesn't demand perfection in us. He just expects us. He expects us to give to Him, and He will take control, and He will take over. And that's the one thing I think that, being a Christian is, apparently I'm getting old in my years, and I think that as we continue to have our children ask us questions, this pressure to be perfect is huge. But Jesus is what perfects us, right? It's the blood of Christ that perfects us. Because nobody here can stand in front of God by their own merit. Nobody here can stand in front of God because of what they've done. Right? We can only stand in front of God because Christ died for us, and that blood makes us perfect. So this is the part that I think we really need to focus on a little more. The thing is, if God demanded perfection in us, if He thought that we could be like Christ, if we could actually live like Christ, He would have never sent Christ. There would have never been that plan for us to be saved. He would have said simply, be perfect. I say it, you do it. If you do it, you make it. But we know that's not the case. We know that's not the reality. Christ died for us to create that perfect. God was aware of this. We read in Hebrews 10, and this would be the kind of the verse we focus on for a moment. In verses 10, it's 12 through 4, or chapter 10, verses 12 through 14. And verses 12 starts off by saying, "But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God, waiting from that time until his enemies should be made a footstool for his feet. For by a single offering he has perfected for all time those who are being sanctified." Christ is that link. And the thing that we need to focus on as we are teaching our children, as we are talking to others, is that becoming a Christian is simply just putting Christ on and allowing them to work through us, right? It's allowing them to take us and use us. It's allowing us to take advantage of opportunities because we understand that we are working with Christ. When I started thinking about this concept and trying to figure out how to best present it, with the pressure of being a Christian, what do you do with sin? Right? Because that's the one thing we struggle with. That is the one issue that keeps us away from Christ, or from God. That is it. That's sin. That's the reason why Christ had to die on the cross. So what if you still see the bad temper, or you still see yourself giving into temptations, and you still see yourself failing to pray as much as you should, or not read the Bible the way that you should? I mean, the list goes for each of us on and on and on of the things that we struggle with individually. You'll never be perfect in this life, and God knows that. But what he does say is in 1 John 1, verse 19, "So if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness." We have to recognize that sin in our life, the reason why we read, the reason why we study, the reason why we stay around one another of like faith, is so that we can see what we're doing wrong. It becomes something like a mirror for us, because we can see when we're wrong, and we can see that we need to repent, and we need to do this, and we can help each other notice this. The reality of everything, all the pressures we face, and the temptations and the struggles and the trials, is simply this: we need God. We need him in our lives. We need him in every turn. We need him in every straight way, whatever analogy you want to use. We need God. One of the questions I'd asked in our studies in the teenage class is how do you define Christian? And we all pretty much had the same answer in the beginning, which was those who follow Christ, right? But the reality of defining a Christian is those who are aware that we need God to make it, right? Because if we understand how much we actually need God in our lives, there's no answer but, what do you need me to do, right? We need him. We can't do this alone. There's that movie, and I love the movie, I know I'm sappy, but Jerry Maguire, right? And everybody's, Jerry Maguire in the movie, there's that famous line in the very end when she says, "You complete me," and the phrase it's a phenomenal phrase, but that's realistically what happens when we invite Christ into our life. He completes us, right? He takes everything about us that's not right and makes it right. He completes us. He makes us who we were born to be. And without him, we're simply lacking. Right? We're simply lacking. The reality is, and I'm going to wrap this up here with kind of this thought. If you're not a Christian, you need to understand you can't do this alone. Whatever you're doing, whatever situation it is, you can't do it alone. It simply doesn't work. You need Christ in your life. At no point will you be enough to make it to heaven. The blood of Christ completes you. It makes you whole. The pressures that having Christ in your life, that they can take away from you if we allow it, are huge. The worry, the stressing, because we've always got him there. We've always got Christ by our side. If you're a Christian already, I'm going to repeat this. You need to understand you can't do it alone. We need Christ in our lives. And even though we may profess Christianity, sometimes we forget how much we actually need him. Sometimes we forget it. We forget that he is our lifeblood. He is what completes us. Let him take all the pressures off your shoulders. So I want to leave you with this thought that life is going to throw a lot of things at you. And some things are going to be extremely hard. And we know we're never going to be faced with a situation that we can't overcome. But that's only if Christ is with us. Right? That's what it takes. It takes having Christ with us. So tonight I want you to think about that, and I want you to take it home with you, and I want you to look for ways in your life this week to get closer to Christ, to get closer and draw closer to God, and let them complete you the way we know they do. So if there's anybody here today that is subject to the gospel call, please come forward as we sing.